To conclude the major causes of the Great Depression in the United States in the 1930s, we can identify some more causes now. There are basically 9 altogether as to why the economy collapsed. And here are some additional ones from what we already previously identified in the first part. Stagnant wages, slow consumer spending, which we already really talked about. That resulted in a drop in gross domestic product, and widespread unemployment set in after 1929. Too many business owners during the 20s had taken large profits while providing expansion, executive salaries, and stock dividends rather than wage increases for hourly workers. Employers created a growing imbalance. Factories and mills were producing more goods, but the purchasing power of consumers was declining because of stagnant wages. Labor unions had declined in power. By 1929, there were only 3.4 million union members. 2/3 of American families in 1929 earned less than $2,000 in annual income, an amount said by economists of the time to provide only basic necessities. In essence, the economy is producing more and more products that consumers could not afford to buy, and too many people have been borrowing too much money for unproductive purposes, as we mentioned, such as speculating in the stock market. As panic set in, factories cut back production or shut down altogether, despite President Hoover urging owners to maintain employment. And from 1929 to 1933, U.S. economic output, called gross domestic product, or GDP, dropped almost 27%. And by 1932, 1/4 of the workforce, as we mentioned previously, was out of work. Businesses posted signs that read, "We are firing, not hiring." We've already talked about the weak agricultural section. At the same time that these financial and industrial sectors are collapsing, the farm sector continued to be very weak. Increasing production during the 20s had led to lower prices for grains and livestock, in part because of the spreading use of tractors to replace horses and mules made farmers much more productive. As more corn and wheat were grown, however, the prices they earned began a relentless decline. This is just an incredible statistic, ladies and gentlemen. A bushel of wheat that brought a farmer $2.94 in 1920 brought only 30 cents by 1932. Incredible. You have poor government policies during this crisis. High tariffs, which leads to a shrinking trade and an inadequate money supply. The old problem of the 19th century has reappeared. The new Smoot-Hawley tariff also prompted other countries to retaliate by passing tariffs of their own, thereby making it more difficult for American farms and businesses to sell their products abroad. U.S. exports plummeted, and that worsened the Depression. Another factor contributing to the Great Depression was the stance of the Federal Reserve, the Fed, the government agency responsible for serving as the central bank by managing the nation's money supply and interest rates. Instead of expanding the nation's money supply, which is common practice in recessions since this time, in an effort to generate growth, you got to put more dollars in circulation. You have to inflate the currency in order to try to stimulate demand. Keynesian economics. The Federal Reserve in this case did the reverse. They reduced the money supply out of concern for inflation and consumer prices. And 10,000 banks, as we mentioned, closed their doors, taking millions of their depositors with them into bankruptcy. A final cause of the Depression was the chaotic state of the European economy, which had never fully recovered from the shock of the Great War. European nations defaulted on paying their war debts, which the American government insisted that it be repaid. But nations such as Great Britain and France had no money to send to Washington, D.C. They were forced to borrow huge sums, $5 billion, from U.S. banks, which only increased their overall indebtedness. In the economies of nations like Germany, which had grown dependent upon loans from American banks during the 20s, the Dawes loans, they were devastated as that money dried up. Then the Smoot-Hawley tariff made it even more difficult for European nations to sell their products in the United States, which meant that those countries had even less money with which to buy American goods. So as the European economy sputtered, it dragged the American economy deeper into depression. So to recap, the causes of the Great Depression: margin buying, stock speculation, a slowing economy or slowing GDP, stagnant wages, and widespread unemployment, contraction of the money supply, high tariffs, an already weak agricultural sector, and world trade ground to a standstill because of those high tariffs. And that concludes the causes of the Great Depression in the United States in the 1930s.